Welcome back, one and all, to Scramble Drill. We got Josh and Ben back with you talking fantasy football. We're hopping into the wide receivers this week. Draft season, it's here, it's upon us, and we're doing the prep, putting in the grind, putting in the hours. And Ben, I don't know how you're feeling, but I was pleasantly surprised with the wide receiver class because everybody told us it was terrible. It turns out I don't think it's all that terrible. I think it's actually pretty par for the course.
We always do that. I mean, do you remember, it's not exactly the same, but do you remember the 2022 class? That's the year Breece Hall and all those guys were. They said that class wasn't very good. They said, oh, there's only like one or two receivers in there, and, we're not really sure about the running backs, going into this. There's no good quarterbacks. And, it turned out to be one of the best draft classes we've had in a long time because it was Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker. Like, there were studs in this class. There's always studs in every class, even if we want to just, brush it. Listen, if you're one of those guys that wants to just, brush it aside, this draft class isn't very good, that's just because you're sad you don't have any first-round picks. That's what that is. You're just jealous.
That or you're a casual.
You are a casual.
There's a lot to like. The more we have gotten into this class, I know that on the top end, you've got a lot of really nice running backs. But last year might have been the deepest class that I can remember. Like, you were getting really good picks at the 202, 203. I'm pretty sure I took Brian Thomas. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I took Brian Thomas in a couple leagues at like the 201 or 202. Obviously, he turned into what he turned into. This class, I genuinely think you're going to get legit dynasty pieces at like the 205, 206 maybe in your rookie drafts.
This class is deeper than last year's class. Now, not at the receiver position, obviously. There's not a Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors. I don't even know if there's a BTJ. Now, granted, BTJ kind of solidified his dynasty asset during the season. That's when he kind of emerged.
Yeah.
But still.
He turned out to be a little bit better than we thought he was going to be.
Yeah. So there's none of those guys yet that we know of. But that doesn't mean it's not a good class. I'm like, okay, there's not an all-world prospect here. That doesn't mean there's not extremely good prospects.
There's a lot to like. We were going through it last week with the receivers, and I think I said on the episode there were 3 guys that I really liked. There might be 4. There's a 4th name that I could see the scenario for them being a really good dynasty asset.
He's risen up quick.
Yeah. And there's still, beyond the top 4, I think there is like a clear cut top 4. There's still some names beyond that remember when DK got drafted a few years ago? He was kind of outside the consensus top guys. He went in the 2nd round, and then he goes and has like 900 yards his rookie year, and everybody goes, oh, okay, he's actually really good. I think there might be 1 or 2 of those guys.
He and A.J. Brown were both 2nd-round picks, I think.
Right. There might be a couple of those in this draft as well. There's one guy for sure that I think is going to be really interesting. There's some people that I see draft people getting excited about. I don't know if that means anything for fantasy, but there's some interesting names.
I'm very excited. This is it happens every year. Like, there's always going to be rookie fever, but I am genuinely just so curious about this class because A, the running back market I think is going to reset, and B, I'm having to pay attention and kind of make my own analysis for these receivers a little bit more than I did last year because I didn't have to make my own analysis for Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors because we'd known about them for a long time. These guys were obviously incredible. Yeah, I think that's fun to me is having to actually pay more attention to these guys, and you realize kind of what you've got, and it's really good.
Yeah. Before we get into the receivers, though, we do have one piece of news about some receivers. It is about receivers in the league. The Bengals signed both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins to contract extensions. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but Chase got 4 years, $160 million, and T got 4 years, $161.
He had to get a little bit more than Myles Garrett.
Yeah, I think it was 40.3 an average annual instead of He had to trump him by 300K.
It's
And then T got
40.25.
4 years. What was it? 115 for T Higgins.
Yeah, I think so. Now T Higgins, I think only the first 2 years of that contract are guaranteed.
Interesting. Well, they locked him up, which I'm not sure. I'll give the floor to you here in a second, but I'm not sure how I feel about paying 40% of your cap to 3 players, just like in general. But I will say this: Jamar Chase had to get paid. I understand paying T Higgins. I think it's just the situation could have been absolutely avoided. You didn't have to put yourself in this spot where you are now, where you've got to pay him top dollar. You didn't need to pay Jamar Chase $40 million over 4 years. You could have gotten him for like 33 last year, probably. So anyways, that part of it aside, this is great for fantasy football because you know the Bengals offense is going to be incredible.
Oh no, I I could not be more excited as a fantasy football player. And I was kind of wrestling back and forth with this thought, about T. Higgins, because you were hopeful that maybe he can go and be himself a wide receiver 1 somewhere. But he consistently puts up. Now, obviously, injuries are an issue, which is why he's never been a top 12 receiver. But when he is healthy, he puts up top 12 numbers. Like, he's consistently 15 to 20 points a game. If you told me he was going to do that over a 17-game stretch, he's a first-round pick. So, like, he consistently puts up those numbers. He won't ever be a wide receiver 1 for his team, per se, but he's going to put up good numbers. If he stays healthy, I could definitely see Jamar being top 5 and T being top 12. Obviously, there's the health concern, but if it happens, it's going to be incredible. Joe Burrow, my gosh, lock him in for fantasy. He's going to be. If I don't see how if they pay Trey Hendrickson, which they're going to try to do, I just don't know how they
It's
improve
still a
the
bad
defense that much. Which is, again, for fantasy, that's elite because you want to chase bad defenses. It's great. And when you have a bad defense with a top 5 quarterback and 2 top 10 receivers, boys, sign me up for this. Now, for real life, I guess I have some thoughts for real life, too, because the Bengals are one of the first organizations I've ever seen criticized for paying their star players, which is something you're supposed to do.
They did
is pay
it
your
the
star
wrong
players.
way.
But they definitely did it wrong. You should have done this last year. You would not have had these problems. You would have had about 30 or 40 more million in cap space than you do now. But it is what it is. The Bengals were stubborn. Maybe this is a change in philosophy for them. Maybe they've kind of seen the error of their ways because they're historically such a cheap franchise. They're like, all right, we're going to pay them. We need these guys. You missed the playoffs and you had them all last year, but hey, you were fun to watch.
I mean, if they pull a Rams, now they have shown they don't give you reason to believe this is going to happen. But if they pull a Rams and draft all these studs on defense and sort of reboot that side of the ball within a year or two, I mean, they could be there because the offense is going to be a Super Bowl caliber team.
The past couple of years, I mean, they got Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. Now, granted, these were all higher level picks, but like Burrow, Chase, T. Higgins, even like the Chase Browns of the world, like that's a good player. So
they just need to do some of this drafting on the other side of the ball because it has not been good.
I don't know. It'd be crazy to see if they keep Trey Hendrickson. I don't know how they go about that. I mean, you don't want to let the NFL sack leader for the past 2 years go, but at the same time, would it be more wise to get multiple different pieces on the defense rather than just him? I don't know, because you don't want to be like the Falcons either. The Falcons have been looking for a pass rusher for the past decade. Ever since Vic Beasley had his 17 sack season, we haven't had a guy come anywhere close to that. So you don't want to be in that situation either, because you need a pass rusher.
Well, if you take your fantasy football hat off and you put on your armchair GM hat, I would have paid Hendrickson and let T. Higgins walk, just because I feel like a pass rusher, of his caliber is more valuable than a second wide receiver.
Yeah. But you also got to keep Joe Burrow happy.
Exactly. And I'm sure he would have been pissed if they let T go. And also, this flew under the radar, but they paid Gesicki. He got like a pretty decent bag himself.
I remember before the Super Bowl, they were interviewing Joe Burrow on like multiple sports talk shows, and he mentioned Mike Gesicki in like all his stuff. He was like, we got to get all these guys paid. We got to move cap around, restructure contracts, get Jamar Chase, T, and he said Mike in that too. So obviously Joe Burrow likes him, which is interesting for fantasy. So don't sleep on Mike Gesicki just yet. If Joe obviously likes him and the Bengals
really
paid
interesting.
him.
Yeah. All of that to say, the Bengals look like they might just be running it back in terms of fantasy the way they did last year, where the defense stinks, but the offense is awesome. So that's good news for everybody in fantasy football land. Let's talk about these receivers.
Yeah, I hope they do well. I really hope they do well.
The first guy here, I think, is the consensus one of the class, Tet McMillan from Arizona. So interestingly enough,
I don't know how to say
there you go. I was not even going to try. I was going to leave that one alone.
I'll give it a shot. Ted, I did not mean offense.
I thought he was going to be the consensus one, like no doubt about it. I did see a mock draft from Daniel Jeremiah, his 3.0, where he had Tet as the wide receiver 2 in the class, which I found really interesting. But now that I'm thinking about it, I think it was the Cowboys pick at 12, and I think they are the first spot that you start thinking receiver. I think that the pick was flipped because Tet profiles more of as an X receiver, and they've already got that in CD, so they might have taken one of the other guys to just fit the offense a little bit better. But all that aside, Tet, I think, is probably your consensus wide receiver 1.
Yeah, no, Tet. I got quite a few things written down about him. My initial, because when you're watching Tet, he looks good on tape, but he doesn't look super fast or explosive. Probably just because he's 6'5". Like, it's hard to be an incredibly explosive player when you're that big and lanky. But he does profile as a true X receiver. I've seen some people say like, oh, there's a risk of like, what if he's a Quentin Johnston? Which I guess in theory, I have thought about that. And while it's within the range of outcomes, he is so his profile is so far and away better than Quentin Johnston's. Like, I'm not super worried about that, because if I watch Quentin Johnston on tape and I watch Tet McMillan on tape, there are massive differences. Tet's a true X. He's great in contested catches. He's got really good agility for his size. He has the long speed. He didn't run at the 40, but when a guy like that gets going and I see him striding, when he's running his routes, like, he can take it to the house. I'm not super worried about that. If he ran a 40, I would guess it's like a 4.5 something, but it would kind of be like Caleb Johnson's 4.5. Go ahead.
He apparently ran a 4.48 at his pro day.
Has that already happened?
Apparently. I saw that tweet, I think, today or yesterday.
I mean, I would assume 4.5 or something like that, but that's because, like I said, he's not going to be incredibly bursty and explosive, but he can take it the distance. He doesn't rely on body catches, which is something that I really, really like, because that to me was like the biggest thing that stood out on Quentin Johnston's profile, and why I think there's no chance Tet becomes a Quentin Johnston, is because QJ runs like him and sort of plays the receiver position, but he can't make catches like Tet can. Tet can go up and win contested catches. He can win catches to where like he has to contort his body and go get it. So I really like that. He's strong. He's good, not great after the catch. Again, to be expected for a bigger receiver. Route running, kind of suspect, but not, that's something they can work on, and I think that'll be fine. Analytics are great. Tet kills the analytic game. If you are a numbers guy, he is awesome. In 2022, his freshman year, 39 catches, 700 yards, 8 touchdowns. 2023, 90 catches, 1,400 yards, 10 touchdowns. 2024, 84 catches, 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns. Dude produces his numbers every time. My early comps to him, it's weird because when I was putting my comps in, I'm like, the floor is a QJ, but I don't, like I said, looking at the way he plays, I just don't see that happening. The ceiling is obviously what you're hoping for with a Mike Evans, a Drake London, or T. Higgins.
Yeah, I think you pretty much hit all the things with Tet. With him, I am admittedly a little bit conflicted because I think he could be an absolute fantasy football monster and like probably needs to be valued similarly to a Marion Hampton. If not right there, maybe slightly behind him. But like at the 102, 103 in rookie drafts. And
most places I watch have like him and Hampton kind of in the same tier.
Yeah. The thing with him though, there is like a little bit of I'm not all the way sold for a couple reasons. He is a little bit more slender than you would like. I think he weighed in at like 210 to 215 pounds at his
here.
Yeah. So he's not super big, and like I don't know how to describe this. He sometimes looks like a really big slot, but he's an X. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, he played. Yeah, I've got his snap share here too. He played like 117 snaps in the slot this past season versus 588 out wide. So like he doesn't play in the slot hardly ever.
Right. It is odd. I don't know where I'm getting that from because he only played like 20% of his snaps in the slot. So he's not a slot receiver. But he kind of gives me like I guess what I'm thinking is I could see an NFL team being like, that's a big slot. We're going to take you and we're not going to play you at X. I don't think that's going to happen, but it could. If it does happen, I feel like it would lessen his fantasy value. But at the same time, I could also see him in like kind of a wide open, McVay, Kevin O'Connell kind of offense, just being like all over the place. You line him up in the slot, you line him up like wherever the matchup is, you line him up. So
yeah, he didn't play a lot from the slot, but I kind of agree with you. Like I don't think that means you can only put him outside either.
Right. I think the safe assumption with him is that he is going to be very good at the next level. I see a lot of Mike Evans comps, which is interest. I think it's like
anytime
a lazy
you see a 6'6" receiver, like you're going to put that up there.
Right.
My initial was Drake London. I think Drake London.
I can see that. I think Drake probably is a little bit more athletic and more physically gifted, but I see it. I was thinking like Vincent Jackson from the Chargers a few years ago.
I didn't think about Vincent Jackson. That's a good one. R.I.P. Vincent Jackson, by the way.
Yeah, that's very sad. That's kind of what I'm getting from him. I don't know if that means instant stud, but I think more likely than not, you're looking at somebody that's a perennial top 12 receiver.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. Especially, like, look at some of the landing spots out there. I used to see him get mocked there. I see him start slipping down boards, but man, the Patriots need a receiver so bad. And I don't think he's so untalented, or like the talent disparities there so much to where like it's not. I don't think it's a crazy pick to take him at 4. Like I get Travis Hunter being there, but if you take Travis Hunter, like you've spent a lot of money on free agency on defense. Now you're going to spend your top 4 pick also on defense. Like y'all have got to help Drake May out somewhere. So I wouldn't be shocked if they took Ted at 4. And if they did, I'm going to be really, really high on Ted because he's now the far and away top receiver for the Patriots.
I do think the situation will say a lot about him because, I mean, if let's say he does go to the Cowboys, that is rough because you're not going to get alpha stuff from him. But
AFC
you know, if he goes to the Raiders, if he goes to where was the other spot that I was
have a
seeing
wide
him
receiver
mocked?
one.
Not really. They got Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers.
They have a top
I was-
target, but they don't have a wide receiver one.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember where I saw him mocked to, and now I'm blanking. But anyways,
Who else? Anyway, yeah.
anything else on Tet?
No, he's a very safe pick to me. It'll kind of obviously depending on landing spot. I would have Amari and Hampton as my 102 right now, but
I
if
would
Amari
too.
and Hampton doesn't go to the best landing spot, like Landon and I talked about in our previous episode, and Tet does get a good spot. Like if Tet's a Raider, if Tet's a Patriot, I'm sure there are other teams that we haven't even thought about, or that we've probably thought about, but we can't just think of off the top of our head. But if he goes to one of those and Hampton's not in the best landing spot, I mean, Tet's the 102, and I don't think it's like, oh, the 102 is not a good pick this year. Like, no, that's perfectly fine. Like, I would absolutely take Tet in a really good landing spot.
Let me float a scenario to you because this is what I saw Daniel Jeremiah do, and I had forgotten about it. The scenario was that Tet slid. He went at 22. But you know who's picking there at 22?
Is it the Broncos?
That would be the Los Angeles Chargers.
Me likey.
That would be
Me
incredible.
likey.
I think I would be quite excited about Tet McMillan
Because
as
he
a
just
Charger.
takes Quentin Johnston's role, and Quentin Johnston sneakily didn't have a horrible year this past year.
He
but
scored.
He is horrible himself. So
He is not
he gets-
good, but he scored
gets
touchdowns.
to take over QJ's role without the drops, and he doesn't hurt Lad McConkey
Right.
because they play two separate roles in the offense.
That would be interesting.
I would like that.
Let's talk about Luther Burden.
Oh, I would love to talk about Luther Burden. I
He
would
is
love to
your
talk
wide
about
receiver
Luther Burden.
2. I'm still not 100% convinced about him as my wide receiver 2 or not. I don't know if he's my 2 or my 3. Let's put it that way. But he's exciting.
Without knowing landing spots, he's my definite wide receiver 2. I will hold it as in like it could change depending on what the NFL actually tells me about these receivers. But for the time being, he's my easy wide receiver 2. I'm a
The
big
only
Luther Burden guy.
the only hesitations I have are 61 catches, 676 yards.
I understand.
That was his 2024 stat line. Now you had 86 for 1,209 in 23, which is great. And this is going to be my only hesitation because I think the film says this guy could be something special. But I'm just wary, and maybe you have more context on this. I'm wary of somebody that kind of just disappeared because 61 for 676, you were just fine. And I don't want fine.
Yeah. So Missouri was a weird team this past year. I watched a lot of SEC football, so I'm a little bit more probably plugged in there than you are.
You definitely
So-
watched a lot more Missouri football than I did this year.
I definitely did. Missouri gave South Carolina a heck of a run for their money this year. Luther Burden actually caught what
He caught what
should have
would have been a game winner, right?
game winner. Yeah, it was one-handed over top of the corner, and then he runs it in for
was
the touchdown.
beautiful. It was
I
beautiful.
threw something in my house, flipped the couch, lost my mind, and then my beautiful prince named Lenoris Sellers, the Rec Specs, brought him back the whole way length of the field, tossed the touchdown to Raheem Sanders, and I again threw something in my living room. It was a very loud experience at the end of that game for me. But that being said, Missouri's offense is really, really weird this past year. Some of the decisions they kind of made, play calling and such, were kind of strange. And their quarterback got hurt a lot, was in and out of the lineup basically the whole year. So I understand the concern, but I don't hold it against him as much. And maybe I am wrong for this. Maybe there is a little bit of bias, but I don't hold him against him as much. having watched a lot of the offense, having seen the struggles they had with the quarterback, with play calling, with other things, he still had 61 catches. I mean, yeah, it's concerning, but it's the play style and the player for me. Like, take the situation out. Let's just look at his tape. We talked a lot about Bucky Irving last year, how his tape was great and his analytics were not. Tet is the analytic guy this year. Burden, to me, is absolutely the tape guy. His tape shines more than any other receiver I've watched. More than Ibuka, more than Golden, more than Tet, more than any other receiver. If I'm watching them on tape, he absolutely pops. He tested well at the combine, which I knew he would. He ran a 4.41, so he's got elite explosiveness. His stop and start is ridiculous. His run after catch is ridiculous. His speed is like, he ran the low 4.4, which is great. He's a strong hands catcher. Same as Tet, which is something I really like in receivers because it translates really well to the NFL, is he does not catch with his body. He wins contested catches, and he just catches with his hands. So I don't see him doing this. He's better at getting open than you would think. He's a very physical receiver. He never goes down on first contact. So when you got speed, first contact, tackle is great. He is also a slot guy. He is definitely a slot guy. He didn't play as many snaps as Tet, because the offense is Missouri is wild. 55 snaps out wide, 462 from the slot, which is great for fantasy. That's really, really good. So he'll play mainly from the slot, but he's also extremely versatile. So if you watch a lot of his tape, it's not just slot stuff or down the field. They get him the ball in space. He get him on screens, pop passes. He can do the work from there. Like I said, I've got written on here, he is a tape is far better than the analytics. That 2023 season breakout. Now, breakout age is also something very notable for receivers. It's very important that they break out early. The guy broke out as a true sophomore in 2023 with 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns. So from my point of view, I guess, is knowing how much Missouri struggled as a whole this past year offensively, having that huge breakout year as a sophomore with the tape itself still doesn't slow down for Luther Burden. Like, he still looks incredible in his 2024 tape. It's just the numbers don't match up. But when you factor in the offense itself, I've got the guy as a borderline elite prospect. I mean, my early comps are a combination of Debo Samuel and Amon-Ra St. Brown, just watching his tape. Again, those are high praise, so you can't say for certain that's who he's going to turn out to be. But my ceiling for him is Malik Neighbors. They're very similar in size. Tet is slender. Luther Burden is compact. He's 5'11", which is about Malik Neighbor and Jamar Chase size. They're both like 6 foot on the dot. He weighs 208 pounds, so he's compact 5'11", and he's an elite athlete.
Yeah, I thought he was really similar to Malik Neighbors as a prospect after the sophomore season. And I think the way they play is very similar. I just think Neighbors is a more elite athlete, if I'm saying that correctly. Neighbors is ridiculous.
I mean, you can look at their numbers too. Like, Neighbors is, numbers-wise, a little bit more athletic than him in every way. Like, he runs the 40s a little bit faster, the verticals a little bit higher. He's just a little bit better, but it's not to say that Burden's not still elite.
Right. I think with Burden, I'm thinking like low end, and this might not even be a good comp because it's not necessarily a skill comp, but it is Kadarius Toney is like the low end. And I say that's not a great comp because Kadarius Toney was a head case, but like you also saw the talent was there.
Kadarius Toney fed for 2 years off that 111 catch, 190 yard game.
Yes.
2 years kept his value up.
The talent was always there. He couldn't translate it into actual to a career.
And now he's strangled somebody.
Oh God, missed that. Makes sense. Those
That happened.
Kansas City
Look it up.
receivers. Good Lord.
Why are they insane, dude? What's wrong with y'all?
Burden's really interesting. I am admittedly really conflicted about who my wide receiver 2 is, just because there's that nagging thing. Like, I just don't like that he kind of blended in. Like Theo Weiss, I just looked. Theo Weiss had 800 yards in Missouri's offense last year. And I mean, he was a good college receiver. It's just one of those things where you want elite guys to just pop. And he did his sophomore year, certainly. And for whatever reason, just did not this past year. And I think part of my hesitation might just be I didn't watch enough Missouri games front to back this past year. But the talent is obviously there. I think you have the tools to get an elite fantasy producer. Because like the tape, when he does pop, it's like, oh gosh, not many players look like this.
Yeah, few players can athletically do what he can do.
Which is exciting. But I am conflicted because the next guy here, Matthew Golden, I'm looking at him and I'm seeing Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave.
That's a smooth criminal right there.
This man
This is a smooth criminal.
He's fantastic. I said this before we hit record. I'm not sure he isn't the most NFL ready receiver in the class. Like, I think he steps onto the field week 1 as a rookie, and for many teams is their wide receiver 1.
Yeah. I think I kind of attribute a lot of his to the Texas offense, because that's also was a really weird offense, because Quinn Ewers just was not what people want him to be. And at Texas, they blow a lot of people out, so they're not in a ton of close games.
Right.
So, but I mean, he did put up his best season. He is another one it is a tape over analytics for sure. That's
Yes.
kind of what I put for him. That's one of the reasons I love Burden, and that's another thing I've got for him, because if you just look at the stats for these two guys, you're going to obviously fall in love with Tet, and you're going to brush these other two guys off. And that's kind of, it's a Bucky Irving situation where, like, oh, the numbers, well, they don't match up. I don't like this about him. I don't like his athleticism. I don't like these numbers he put up. I'm like, just turn on the tape, and this guy's incredible. And Matthew Golden, he's a guy to me that is, he's a translator. Like, the route running he can do is absolutely going to translate to the next level.
A couple other things with him. He ran 80% of his routes out wide, which I find fascinating.
I like that a lot. I like that.
He strikes me as the kind of guy that can play slot and out wide. He's 6 foot 195 on PFS. I don't remember what he.
Perfectly fine.
It's great. That is the Garrett Wilson body type.
Which is what the NFL
the other thing
wants.
with him,
the NFL doesn't like. They're kind of in the middle. Like, they don't want the 5'9" slot receivers or the 6'5". They want the guy that can do it all. I can put you out wide, or I can put you in the slot. I can do either one.
The other thing with him, he had in his first game against Georgia 3 for 77. In his second game against Georgia, 8 for 162.
I've seen some of the Georgia tape on even the plays that he didn't get the ball. They were showing him just absolutely. When it's the route he does so well is the in-cutting route, out or up and just in. Like, he smokes the corner every time. Like, they cannot stay with him every single time. And that is for sure an NFL route. Quarterbacks love that one.
The other thing with him, too, the 2 times that he had double-digit targets, he had 149 yards and 162 yards. So you'll that.
You'll take that. You'll take that.
When I'm watching him play, it's smooth criminal, like you said, but also, like, he is all of these things. He is a great route runner. He is electric, very, very quick, great in and out of breaking routes. The other thing, too, he is an incredible contested catcher. I can't count how many times I was watching him go up with his hands, strong hands, catch a ball on a dude's head repeatedly. I mean, it happens over and over and over again. And I didn't really see that same, like, it's a smooth, it just looks effortless. It looks so easy for him to just go up and moss somebody. He doesn't even make it look like it's an exceptional thing that he's doing. I didn't really see that in some of these other receivers. It's just like, oh, wow. I mean, he made it look so easy. And that to me is like, I'm watching him and I'm thinking, this is Garrett Wilson. That's what I'm watching. He's an X receiver, but he's also like, you can just put him anywhere on the field. And I'm kind of just curious where he will end up getting drafted, because if the Chargers draft him, I would imagine in that
Actually,
scenario,
I would love that.
well, I would think they would play him out wide and Ladd would play in the slot in that situation. I've also
Yeah.
seen him mocked to the Raiders with their first, second round
I
pick.
would love that.
I would love that. I think that would be Geno Smith throwing the dude. Would not be surprised if he leads all rookie receivers in receiving yards if he goes to the
Geno
Raiders.
Smith just loved JSN. And what does JSN do? JSN runs great routes.
Yes. All that to say, I'm very, very, very excited about Matthew Golden. And it feels like nobody was all that in on him until the combine. And then I guess, was it just we just saw how smooth he was? I don't know. I don't know what happened, but he has rocketed
I think it
up
was-
boards.
Yeah. I don't know exactly how to put my finger on it, but he doesn't look on the field like he runs a 4.29, which is amazing, but
ridiculous.
he doesn't look like a 4.29 guy. Isaiah Bond looks way faster than him when you're watching tape at Texas. But you can tell that Golden is easily the better receiver. So when you combine that, like, my tape tells me he's a great skill receiver, and the fact that he can run a 4.29 really just elevates him into a different stratosphere of receiver. I'm like, I wasn't even taking you because I think you're a burner. The fact that you are a burner on top of all this, that's just icing on the cake.
Yeah. He has another gear he can go into, which is nice. So I am very split on Golden versus Burden for wide receiver 2.
I've
But
kind of
even
got
that
like
being said,
them all like three guys in a tier of their own at wide receiver 2, basically.
yeah, I think I'm just not as wowed by Ibuka just watching him back. But yeah, I mean, I think he's solidly right there. At least for me, solidly right there behind the top 3.
Yeah, I guess I think Ibuka. I think he's bordering on underrated.
He might
I
be.
don't, because it's an easy comp, but kind of stay with me when I say it, is a Chris Olave. Obviously, they were both wide receiver 2s at Ohio State, so it feels like a cheap comp. But think about it. Is Emeka Ibuka and Chris Olave were never the one. They were never the most talented guy there at Ohio State. But that's because they were playing alongside Garrett Wilson, supremely elitely talented receiver, and JSN was there, again, another supreme elite talent at receiver. Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously he hasn't popped at the NFL level yet, but we were ready to label him a generational, like, this guy's going to be the next Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase level player. And now he's got Jeremiah Smith, who people are already saying he's going to be the number 1 overall pick in his draft class. So he's overshadowed by all these world-ending Avengers-level threats at receivers, and he just consistently is a 1,000-yard receiver. He didn't have it his sophomore year, but he only played 10 games that year because he got hurt. So he's consistently a 1,000-yard double-digit receiver. And then you see Chris Olave do this. He did the same thing at Ohio State. He was always behind another guy, but he gets to the NFL level and he pops, because he's just because he wasn't the best in the world doesn't mean he's not still elite. So I could absolutely see him coming straight into the league and being a Chris Olave type. Where like, oh, he's actually the wide receiver 1 for this team. Where did this come from? Oh, he's actually been good his entire career. He just was playing alongside Jamar Chase level players.
That's very possible. I think with him, it is it's tough because the Ohio State offense is so friendly. And he did have Avengers on the other side of the field. So, like, other teams don't focus on Ibuka ever. Like, they're focusing on Marvin Harrison and they're focusing on Jeremiah Smith. So, for him to have 100 yards, it's like, I don't know. It's not that it's empty calories, but you do almost put an asterisk next to it.
It was
Like,
such a run-heavy team, too. Like, they had Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins also toting the rock. So with that run-heavy team still having 1,000 yards in that offense, and maybe, obviously, Ohio State's very good, so they put it on people. But
they had one of the best offenses in college this past. Like, it's, I don't know. I mean, Travion Henderson had 1,000 yards. Quinshon Judkins had 1,000 yards. Ibuka had 1,000. Jeremiah Smith had 1,300. Like, everybody ate. So I don't know if that's a knock.
But I don't feel like that's because he's he's with all these other guys. Of course he's playing well. Like, no, he's still good. That's why he's playing well. Like, he's a very good player.
Right. He's very solid. I certainly think he could be like a Chris Olave. I also am a little worried that he's like John Mechie, where he's good. Like a good NFL wide receiver.
He's more talented than Mechie ever was, though, in my opinion.
Maybe. And that's the thing with these guys that kind of have elite players around them, is it's sometimes hard to know, and it's also sometimes hard to know like how good they are. It's also sometimes hard to know how bad they are. Like it goes both ways, where he could be a diamond in the rough. He could also be somebody that it's like, yeah, I mean, but he got 1,000 yards playing on the best offense in college.
Yeah, I think the thing for me though there is like Mechie was never considered anywhere close to a first-round pick, but Ibuka has been a first-round pick for like 2 or 3 years now. I mean, he broke out early. He does that thing where we like to see it with receivers, young breakout age. So that it doesn't scare me off. Like he's an extremely high floor player to me. Do I see him becoming the best receiver in this class? No, I don't. Which is, I mean, I guess that's a fair enough comp because I see a world where Luther Burden could easily be the best receiver in this class. There's a world where Matthew Golden could be the best receiver in this class. I don't necessarily see that, but I wouldn't be shocked if it happened either, which is why I've kind of got him in the same tier as Golden and Burden.
I do remember when Garrett Wilson came out as a prospect, there was that, and it was the same thing with Chris Olave. Like, we knew Garrett Wilson was really good. Maybe this is just more true of Olave. He was just hidden. It was like, I mean, yeah, he's good. How good is he actually? I don't know. But then you see him
on an
NFL
NFL offense, and you're like, oh, shoot, yeah. He was just playing along top 5 talents.
Right. And that could certainly be the case with Emeka Ibuka. I think the other name that I'm fairly intrigued by is Trey Harris from Ole Miss. I'm trying to think of... I think that's like the last name that I could see like fantastic.
We mentioned it before the show. The guy from Stanford, Ayomanor. Ayomanor. I'm not quite exactly sure how to say that. He's interesting. He's put up good numbers, and we mentioned this with Caleb Johnson when we did our running backs a couple weeks ago, and then you said it again. The fact that you're putting up good numbers on what is a truly horrific offense with Stanford, so the fact that you were a diamond on that rough is pretty impressive.
Yes. That does that needs to be factored in. Was like Stanford was so bad. I think it cannot be overstated.
He scored 6 touchdowns.
Actually,
they only scored like 7 as a team.
They played NC State. Now, NC State was a 6-6 football team. State beat them 59-28. Just it was the best game we played all year was Stanford. So this team was real bad. I think they were 3-9. He had 830 yards and 6 touchdowns. all things considered,
That's pretty good.
pretty good
That's
day.
pretty good.
Pretty good year at the office. Yeah, for Aomanor. You've got, he had 100 yards against State. He had 100 yards against Wake Forest, 87 against Syracuse, 100 against TCU. So some of that's probably they just force fed him. He's really interesting. I completely forgot there was one other name, Jaden Higgins, before we got to Trey Harris.
Yeah, Jaden Higgins is interesting.
I'm not sure how excited I am about him, but at 1,100 yards for Iowa State. I don't have a ton on Jaden Higgins, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I haven't super gone in depth with Jaden Higgins yet. I should. I just haven't got there yet, really.
I mean, I guess.
But Trey Harris, you had mentioned him. I do like Trey Harris as well. Yeah, he feels to me like he could kind of fly under the radar in a similar situation to what happened with DK Metcalf and AJ Brown when they were at Ole Miss. Is because it's a very receiver friendly offense with Lane Kiffin there. There's always a gunslinger at quarterback. This year it's Jackson Dart, who is starting to get a whole lot of steam in the community as well. When they're like, "Oh, this guy's actually could be a really good NFL prospect, and maybe it's not the system." So there's that. But yeah, he seems like he's a good physical receiver. I could see kind of sliding past people's radar, not an elite route runner or anything like that, but he's a good vertical threat. He's very physical.
He does kind of remind me of DK Metcalf a lot. Talk about somebody that had 1,000 yards multiple times. He had 935 yards again at Louisiana Tech. Then he transferred to Ole Miss, has 1,000 yards and 1,000 yards.
Yep. And he does it on very few targets. He had 76 targets and 87 targets.
Yeah, let me interest you. And again, maybe this is empty calories. Ole Miss's schedule this past year was very weird, but he has 179 and 2 touchdowns against Furman, which, Furman. 130 against Middle Tennessee State, 225 against Georgia Southern. Okay, I get it. Terrible teams. Fine. 176 against Kentucky, 81 against South Carolina, 102 against LSU. And then, for whatever reason, just got one catch against Florida, but it was a 43-yard touchdown.
One catch, as long as it's a touchdown, that's all that matters.
I am seeing, there's a little clip on the ESPN thing. He got injured in that game, so I guess he caught his touchdown, then got hurt and left the game. But before he got hurt, 43-yard tub.
He is a little bit older, too. He's 23. But so was Xavier Legette, who had a not horrible rookie season. So in deeper leagues, that's a guy to keep an eye on. Like, hey, if a team shows real interest in him, like the Panthers did in Legette, that's worthy of a second-round pick to me.
You also don't have the weird situation where Legette didn't exist and then all of a sudden was amazing. Like Trey Harris has been here for a while. He's been good for a hot minute.
Xavier Legette goes
that part.
100, 150, 98, 1,300 yards.
Those conversations were like, what am I missing? What happened?
What was that? Where's that been this whole time?
Yeah. Harris, I'll just leave it with this on him. He is the kind of guy that if this archetype hits, he's an X receiver. He's an outside dominator. Maybe there's a little bit of pause with Ole Miss's offense. Like they just were better than just about everybody they played. So there's that part of it that maybe is a red flag. But he didn't play every game this year.
There, as a good thing is they brought in Juice Wells, remember? Who, I don't like him because I'm a South Carolina fan and he left us for Ole Miss to try to be better than us, and he really wasn't. So deal with that, Juice. But they brought in Juice, and Juice was going to be like, oh, Juice is going to be incredible in this Ole Miss offense. And then he didn't even touch Trey Harris, so there's that.
There's that too. Yeah, Trey Harris was – I watched a couple Ole Miss games this year. I don't know why, but I did, and he was the offense it felt like. Like they were funneling everything through him, which is nice to see.
Yeah. No, I like it.
So he's exciting.
Juice.
I think
I say that to say, Juice, you should have just stayed at South Carolina, man. We could have made a playoff
Should've.
run. You were putting up
he should have.
numbers with us, and you ruined your career.
Is there anybody else that is worth a mention here? There's one guy that I have seen draft people get a little bit excited about, Savion Williams. I don't know that I see it, but there are some draft people I've seen that get pretty excited about him.
Yeah, there's that. There's still another guy to, I guess, pay attention to would be Isaiah Bond from Texas.
I don't see
Got
it with
elite
him,
speed.
I'll be honest.
Got elite speed, so still not as fast as Matthew Golden. I remember before the before the draft, they were interviewing Isaiah Bond. He's like, "Get record. I'm gonna break Xavier Worthy's record." And I'm like, "You weren't even the fastest guy on your team."
Yeah, he looked fast, I think, in the games, but he
His play
was not
speed
as
is faster.
fast. Yeah, I don't see it with him, I'll be honest. Like, he never popped on tape. I think he was just a guy that was fast. But he wasn't even that fast.
Which that works at Texas.
I mean, yeah. His two best games are against UTSA and UL Monroe.
Like I said, it's not a guy to be in love with. Just pay attention, I guess. You can tell we're not incredibly excited about him.
No. Well, here's a few Isaiah Bond stat lines, and maybe there's some more context for these that is worth considering. But these are just terrible. 1 catch for 5 yards against Oklahoma, 2 catches for 11 yards against Georgia, 0 catches for 0 yards against A&M, 1 catch for 22 yards against Georgia, 1 catch for 8 yards against Ohio State.
So, while his teammate Matthew Golden out here was like, get him in big games against these good cornerbacks and he can make them look foolish, Isaiah Bond gets absolutely shut down.
Yeah, I mean, after, let's see here. After October 12th, he did not have above 55 yards in a game.
Interesting.
Not great. I don't know if that is a Matthew Golden situation, like they realized, oh shoot, Matthew Golden's really good, or what. But yeah, Isaiah Bond, talking about guys that just blended in. Matthew Golden really, or Isaiah Bond really blended in.
Yeah.
So there is that. I have seen him be mocked as like a second round pick. I do not see it with him at all.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm not. I don't love Isaiah Bond, don't get me wrong. It was just I guess he was a big name. Or maybe it's just because he's at Texas.
Maybe. There's Tez Johnson.
Yeah.
From Oregon. He's my size.
I don't love that. Is he your size like Devonta Smith was your size and Xavier Worthy your size? Or so he's like an elite player or has elite speed?
I think he is my size as in just my size. I don't want to compare him to Devonta Smith.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Like I was kind of being facetious, like, oh, he must be, an incredibly skilled receiver, put up world class
maybe
numbers.
we have us skinny guys have a sleeper build or something that I'm not aware of. But when you weigh 154 pounds at the combine, that to me is a red flag.
Yeah, you weigh 154 pounds at the combine, but you didn't put up 1,900 yards and like 30 touchdowns either.
Right. You do have 181 against Penn State in the playoff. That is nice.
That's all right.
Or the Big Ten championship, not the playoff. But anyways.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm there yet. Is it worth having a Travis Hunter discussion before we close out wide receivers?
Yeah, that's interesting. I kind of forgot it. I thought about it before the show. I'm like, we need to mention Travis Hunter. Then I completely forgot. I still don't know what to do. because like they said, he's going to be a corner. So unless there's an offense out there that's like he's going to play 80% of the snaps for us, and then fill in on defense. I don't care how talented he is. I can't take a 50% snap share guy anywhere.
So where would you? That was going to be my question: is where would you take him?
It had to be like probably a late second.
Okay, I don't
Because
think I
he
could take him
is-
until the third.
He is crazy talented, but so like I don't want to ignore the talent, but it's like I said, like if he's going to play 50% of snaps, and that might be being generous with it. He may only be a package player. I can't trust that in my lineup unless we're in like a 16 team league or more.
That's the thing is if he were just going to play receiver, there would be an argument.
Oh, he might be the
whether or not-
one-on-one.
Yes, it's an argument whether or not he or Ted McMillan's the wide receiver one. If he were just
If he
just to
played
be a
only receiver, he could push Genty as the 101. Like that's how talented he is.
right, but if he is only going to, have 55 targets, you can't take him in the first round. Certainly, I don't know that you can take him in the
He's going
second
to score
round.
touchdowns on a third of those? Then if so, then yes.
I mean, if he has 350 yards, like maybe he has 7 touchdowns and they just sort of scheme some stuff. But like, you can't, like that's never in your flex. You can't play that.
Yeah, no. There has to be, and it's going to be tough for him. Like the team either has to come out and say, we're going to use him primarily at receiver. And
Which they
even
won't.
then, it's hard to tough because like I don't want them to say that, and then get to the NFL, and he's a great cornerback, and they use him 80% on defense and 20% on offense.
See, here's what's going to happen. Corners don't grow on trees. Not like not like great wide receivers grow on trees. They don't. But elite
Most
corners
corners could
are
play
harder
receiver.
to come by. Probably.
But not
like,
every receiver can play corner.
Like Travis Hunter could be the best corner in the NFL a year from now. Very easily, I think. I don't think he would be the best receiver in his whole career.
No, you're probably right.
Which it is kind of a misleading argument because there are more receivers that are more impactful. But all of that to say, I think his talent as a corner, like he is as elite as he is as a receiver, I think he's a slightly better prospect as a corner. And corners are just harder to come by. So I think he's just going to play full-time corner. And he's going to be an elite corner. He's going to be great. I just don't think they're going to use him enough at receiver to justify the price.
Yeah, no, you cannot take a package player any higher than like if your team is set at every position and you're sitting there at 211 and is like, sure, I'll take the upside shot, maybe.
That's
But
the thing is you have to
there's
be
gotta be
willing
some
to
set
just
teams.
you got to be willing to light the pick on fire if you're going to take him. Which some teams that are loaded that have won back-to-back championships are like, yeah, sure, I'll light this pick on fire if it doesn't turn anything. That's fine. And I'll
If
get
he's not
Travis
that good
Hunter.
or he doesn't do that, I'll drop him. But
Right.
yeah,
It's frustrating
not worth the
because
risk.
the talent is unbelievable.
Oh, he could
but he
be
might
a
be
fantasy wide receiver 1 if he wanted to.
Yes, absolutely. He's incredible he's such a good receiver. He is
But he wants to play
filthy. I think the NFL wants him to play corner. He wants to play both. He's going to say the whole time he wants to play both, full time, all the time. But he's not going.
They're not going to let you do that.
It's just not going to happen.
I did think of a way Cincinnati can save themselves is you're paying Chase and T. Higgins all this money. Now they got to play corner too.
Yeah.
We just fixed the secondary, guys.
Two birds, one stone. Put your elite athletes on both sides of the field and you'll be fine.
They're only going to survive 1 to 2 years in the league, but it's going to be great.
Yeah. Oh, man. Anything else on wide receivers? That's all I've got.
No, I think the summary is there are some interesting guys late, but there is really a big four at receiver.
Yeah. I think there's three
And
that I feel like confident in, and then Ibuka I feel pretty good about. And then there's some
I
intriguing
think
ones.
I'm way more confident in Ibuka than you are.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you are.
Yeah. Either way, it's not a nightmare class. It's not Tet and nobody, which is what
No.
the community flips out about. Like, oh, there's no good receivers in this class. If I don't get Tet, like what am I going to do? Am I going to just take a running back or something? Shut up.
Landon will be saying this all offseason leading up to the draft, but I will reiterate it. If you are not a perennial listener of the show, take your 102s, 103s, 104s, and trade them for multiple late firsts or like the 108 and the 201 and the 206. Do it and don't really think too hard about it.
I'll definitely for 104, anything like 104 later, I'm trading back. Trading back every time.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's going to be tempting because there's going to be really good players available at 104, but yeah.
Like say I'm sitting here and for the sake of argument, so let's go Genty, Hampton, Tet. They all get good landing spots. They all go top 3. But then let's say some other guys get good landing spots. You got, let's say Burden goes to the 49ers at pick 11, which would be beautiful for a guy with his skill set. And then you get a Quinshawn Judkins to the Browns. And then somebody else to a Caleb Johnson to the Cowboys. That's gonna be a tough call. Just move back a little bit. Get you some seconds, dude.
Yeah, let me tell you what, if you can turn Tet into Quinshawn Judkins and Ibuka, sheesh Louise.
That's pretty good.
That's good eating. That's good eating, I'll tell you
This
what.
class is not nearly as bad as people want to lead you to believe, and it is also way deeper than people want you to believe too. So second round picks are valuable for sure.
We also haven't talked about tight ends yet, and we've been teasing it out, but
we keep saying
there's great tight ends
class, and it is.
It's a great
And
tight end class.
I don't know if it's going to be as barren as people say at quarterback either, because
Probably not.
there's no elite quarterbacks for sure, but there's going to be a guy go top 5 for sure. At least one of them is going to go top 5, which that has to push that guy up boards. And then Shador has been on people's radar for a long time anyway. I'm assuming there is going to be a team in the first round take a shot on him. And Jackson Dart now is picking up a ton of momentum. So now there's 3 quarterbacks that have entered the equation. I'm not saying that any of them are elite by any means, but there are now quarterbacks to pay attention to as well.
Yeah, I just was looking at mock drafts before we hit record, and Jackson Dart sneaked into the first round, and Shador went to the
He's
Giants.
picking up momentum like crazy.
Yeah. You got to, like the Steelers at the end of the
like
first.
Right before the NFL season starts, like Jackson Dart is probably going to be a top 10 pick in mock drafts. Like that's
likely.
where we're heading as far as momentum.
Yeah, you might be lighting that pick on fire, but you're going to have to because a first-round quarterback is worth so much. So,
if it hits,
yeah,
your
totally
franchise is
understand
set for a decade.
Yeah. That's all I've got. All of that to say, great class, really interesting receivers. Excited to get some of these guys on my dynasty teams because this is going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm enjoying this. I can see this is going to be one of the more enjoyable rookie draft seasons that we've had in a while.
I think this is going to be a year that the Sharps really have a great year. I could see casuals coming in here and just taking some guys that aren't maybe as good because they have name value or something, or they're just like oh, I'm just going to take, I don't know, fill in the blank.
And even some of these guys
is.
are good, like, a guy that popped in the, like, Landon had mentioned Cam Scadaboo in this category. Now, I'm not saying that because I think Scadaboo's like a bad prospect or anything, but like more people are going to know him than some of these other guys, that we list in here.
There's dudes that people have never heard of that are going to be great.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure. Maybe people are turning around here on Matthew Golden, but you've also got like Caleb Johnson, played at Iowa. Nobody knows who he is. The
Guy
people
was
who
the
pay
second best
attention,
running back in football.
right? People who pay attention knows who he is. There's a few other running backs that like look great on paper, but people don't know who they are. You
And
mentioned
there's
the
guys that look
Stanford
great
receiver.
on tape, but like, obviously a my guy, spoiler alert for me, is like I love DJ Giddens' tape. Played at
Yeah. Kansas State.
Kansas State. Nobody watched Kansas State this year. Nobody knows who this guy is.
I'm already anticipating in the Granddaddy the Mall the picks when it's like the 106 and you're getting certain people on the board and they're like, I don't know who any of these people are anymore. It's going to be great.
I have no picks in the Granddaddy of them all, so I got to figure out how to change that somehow, even if I can get a second somewhere. I
The
got
FOMO
nothing.
that you'll be experiencing is it's going to be crippling.
Yeah, this is gonna be bad. I'm already bracing myself for it.
Holy. Well, on that disappointment, it is time to end. That will do it from us. I think you and Landon are doing another one later this week, so you'll have
Gonna try
two
to.
for one this week here on the show. So we'll see you all in the next episode a little later this week. Have a good one, everybody.